Hey folks, today we're going to look at 5 of the top breakage points in G1 Transformers, Part 2. I'll link Part 1 down in the comments below. Let's get started with number 5, and that's Constructicon Hook. In general, the Constructicons are pretty sturdy, which is a good thing because they can be a little tricky to work on. Hook seems to be the weakest of the bunch, and when you run into him in the wild, he often looks like this. So let's take a look at some of those common weak spots in Hook. His literal hook might be snapped off, those go missing a lot. And then his waist joint will be separated in half, not because that joint is broken itself, that's really strong, sturdy die cast, but because of the attachment points to the rest of the body. Those are just plastic and they can break. A lot of times I see that the screw is simply missing. But the most common break point on Hook is his lower leg being snapped. And that's because of this slider. In order to transform the foot, you have to slide the foot outward in the lateral direction. That's the only way the foot will fully extend and seat against the leg. Now, when you try to first transform it, you'll notice that you hit some resistance, right? It binds because there's nothing in the mold that actually guides the foot outward to get seated, which is not the case in a lot of Transformers toys like the mini cars. Think of Gears, for example. It's very rudimentary, but there is a little bit of molding there that guides his foot outward. So if you feel the resistance and just try to push past it, then the leg will snap. And at number 4, we've got another combiner, and that's Onslaught. He's this sturdy looking military truck, but unfortunately, he's molded in mostly fragile blue plastic. As this plastic ages, it becomes brittle even to the touch. It's very difficult to transform him, it's unsafe to ship him, and when he gets to me, he often looks a lot like this. And looking for weak spots on this toy, there's really no part that's spared. You can see on this example, his arm is broken, his knee is broken, large panels have broken off the leg. Even as I was filming this, little crumbling bits started to fly off. But probably the most susceptible point on this toy is this joint between the trailer and the lower leg. That is something of a fulcrum that bears a little bit higher forces, and you'll often see onslaughts in the wild with just one foot. Unfortunately, there's not a great fix here. Part swapping is your best bet. The plastic is so brittle that if you glue it, it's likely to just break in another spot. And number 3 is Hot Rod, who, despite a slightly complicated chest and hood transformation, is actually pretty sturdy. He always tends to break in the same way, which is this. And you might think because he's been reissued so many times that there are a lot of replacement parts available for the vintage toys. And there are not, because the molds of the reissues just don't match. The dimensions are slightly off. It might just be half a millimeter, but they just don't fit. The parts don't seem to be compatible, which is something I've learned the hard way. Sometimes the chest goes missing, and that's usually because it just pops off of these yellow pegs. Thankfully, the piece is pretty flexible, so if you have a replacement, it'll pop back on just as easily. Sometimes the head will go missing. Now, that's a little bit tougher to deal with because usually it's these hoops that the peg of the head fit into that actually break. You can see in this example where it's just cracked off, it should be a complete hoop as you see here. And the most common break point of Hot Rod is the entire roof snapping off at the pivot point that's used for transformation. To transform him safely, it's really important to get that hood and the legs extended and out of the way in order to create clearance for the roof to swivel around. If you don't do that, there's a lot of unnatural force being applied to that small plastic pivot point, which is made even worse because it's spring loaded from the bottom, as you can see here. At number 2, it's Trailbreaker, and everything we cover here applies to Hoist equally. When you run into him in the wild, the head is often detached along with the cover of that truck bed. He's got some other problems, like his hips will get super loose, and the chrome on his front bumper and his legs, front and back, will wear off pretty badly. But the main problem is the separation of this head, and it's due to this. There's a single metal pin holding the head to the body, and there's really nothing holding the pin in position other than a little bit of intrinsic friction within the joint. There's no glue, it's not knurled, there are no stops on the ends, and as you can see, I can push it back and forth just with light pressure from my screwdriver and my finger. So you can imagine over several play sessions, it could work itself to one side and then just pop out. And good luck finding a replacement. These tend to just disappear. But you can create a replacement from a nail. You just need to find one with a similar diameter shaft and cut it to size. And then what I like to do is coat it with clear nail polish to create enough friction to keep it in place. And we've reached number 1, and that is Swoop, the most valuable of all the Dinobots. And when he hits my desk, he usually looks something like this. And his high value is directly connected to the situations we're about to cover. So, to start, you might think that his long wingspan means that the wings tend to break. I really don't see that being a big problem. They fold away pretty well, but the chrome does tend to wear off badly. And another issue is the way his legs transform off of his back. They swing down on these pretty flimsy small pieces of plastic at the knee joint. And it's not his worst failure point, but they do tend to break, and you'll see a lot of one legged swoops out there. But by far, Swoop's weakest point is his beak. If you're out there looking for one, you'll find a lot more without a beak than with. And there are basically two reasons for it. The first part is that that upper part of the beak is clear plastic, and that's already a problem right off the bat. The second issue is that upper beak is not really supposed to move. If you look at the joint, everything's squared off. That's not really intended as a swivel, but it does give a little bit, and it could fool you into thinking that it's part of the articulation. Actually, the bottom jaw is articulated. That's what moves the mouth. And then the head itself on the neck joint is also articulated. So you can move the whole head. But if you're using the upper beak as like a handle for play as a child, there's a really good chance it's just going to snap off. And it's very hard to find replacement parts, right? If they came off the toy at any point, it was most likely because it was broken. So your best bet is to try to find an intact swoop, and those are increasingly rare. And there you have it, another 5 of the top breakage points of G1 transformers. And if you're out there collecting or repairing transformers, I can almost guarantee that you've run into every one of these issues. It's one of those shared experiences that connects us all through the hobby. And if you enjoy this sort of thing, I hope you'll take a look at some of the other videos on the channel. We cover history and trivia, little design quirks, and repair techniques. Let me know in the comments if you've run into any of these issues like I have, or if there are some other common breakpoints that you think I should cover in a future video. As always, I hope you found this information useful, and we'll see you next time.